And we're going to do, let's see, a couple more tricks here. Let's go back to my trace directory. I think I made a mistake there. So in my trace file name, you notice here I didn't actually put a file name, I just put a path name. So I want to put the name of a file after that. So what I could do is get the GUID of the orchestration. So here's some code that there's two ways to get the what's called the instance GUID. Every time you run an orchestration, it creates an instance GUID for it, a global unique ID for tracking purposes. And the standard way to get it is this line of code right here, where you say Microsoft xlang s core service root service dot instance GUID. But there's actually a bug with that, and I mean it basically works, but sometimes it'll put a little red exclamation point in your program and it won't actually compile correctly, which is very strange. And so instead, Microsoft actually gave me this get around. So this is yet another way to get a GUID, the exact same GUID, but using a different technique. The bad thing about this technique is this is actually your orchestration name. So you have to hard code your orchestration name into this statement. So we're going to go back here, and at the beginning, right after our receive shape, you cannot put anything in front of the receive shape really, because the receive is what starts your orchestration. So that needs to be the first shape. So here we can now get this GUID, and so my orchestration name is what? So I called it orcpo demo 1. The other way to find this would be click on the white space here and then come down here, and that's the type name. So right here, this is your type name of your orchestration. And then this is the GUID, the string process ID. So we're going to create a variable called that, and we're going to make that a string. I think I have a punctuation mark wrong here or something. Okay, yeah, my mistake. Right here we don't need the comma. Okay, so now we want to say our trace file name, var trace file name equals v trace file name. And just to make this even more clear, let's do this. Let's call this our trace file path. And then let's make a new variable called trace file name. I think it's just better documented this way, easier to read for other people who might pick up your program later. Okay, so we have trace file path, which is initialized to this, and let's go ahead and say that it has to have a closing slash on the end of it. And then we're going to use trace file name, which is not going to be initialized, and right here we're going to say trace file name is v trace file path plus, we're going to use the string process ID, the GUID of the orchestration. Actually, we'll do two things. We'll put the orchestration name here plus an underscore plus the GUID plus dot text. Okay, so trace file name is the path plus this literal plus the GUID of the orchestration plus text. That way, if I run the same orchestration 2 or 3 times, it will actually create 2 or 3 trace files, and each one will be dated and have its own unique information in it. So at this point, we're ready to deploy, and I'll do that and stop the video. So the deploy completed. Now if I were to run this orchestration without putting the C# library in the GAC, I would get an error that would say something like cannot find DLL so-and-so. So I'm going to go to my DLL, which is in my bin debug library, and I'm going to copy this BizTalk function library into the GAC. The GAC is just a directory on your disk called C/Windows/assembly. Now after we deploy, again, we always do a restart of the host instance. And as soon as that's restarted, we're going to go drop our file. Then we're going to go to hat. So I open the hat utility, which I had earlier closed. do the query most recent 100, and we did get the error here, and this we actually saw in a prior video. What I'm finding here is every time I deploy, I'm actually losing my pipeline and my map. So I have to go to my receive location for map demo in flat complex. Actually I have to refresh first. And we have to do this every time I deploy, basically. Go to the properties and see what it does. It undeploys the pipeline, which means it resets you back to the pass-through receive. And so we just have to reset that pipeline every time. It also undeployed, redeployed the maps. So we'll go to ports, receive ports, and here we had an inbound map that we've kind of lost. And so we'll turn that back on. In the future, I'll show you another way we can get around this by doing a different type of deploy. And so now we go drop the file again. Rerun our hat query. Okay, so we're at 401. You can see the orchestration ran. Everything looks good here. And now we want to go to our trace directory and see if we got anything. So here's our trace, and I think this is pretty cool if I say so myself. So what we have here is the name of the orchestration. We have the GUID of that orchestration, which we might be able to cross-reference to HAT. That's 3F6A. So if we look at the orchestration here and go all the way to the right, see that 3F6A? That's the service instance ID of your orchestration. So you can actually cross-reference your trace file now back to HAT and see what orchestration it ran, what time, and all this type of stuff. And then here you can browse the file, and it says TRC 1000. We received a standard PO, and here's actually your purchase order up to about right here. And then interestingly enough, we actually got an error. It says system exception, argument out of range, index and links must refer to a location within the string. So that was an exception I wasn't expecting. And then basically this is the system exception, and then it fell through to the bottom and it said TRC orchestration ended. So one thing it looks like we need to do is add a carriage return line feed, actually either at the beginning or end of each of our little messages here. And we can see the PO was under $1,000 from trace 2100. So we can go back to our orchestration now and see, you can see the 1000 is here, trace 1000, and then you can see the trace 1500. We never got to that because the catch happened, and that threw us down to trace 1600, which is, find 1600, that's right here. Then that continued to 2100, which is this side, small PO, and then we see the 999. So that completes this demo, which we covered several things: how to call C#, how to get the instance orchestration of the GUID using this little expression right here, and then we also used our C# program to create a trace file. In one of the next videos, we'll look at the orchestration debugger that comes with BizTalk.